Well, friends, family, saints, aides, and beautiful, brilliant souls, I'm so excited because today on the podcast, I have none other than my amazing, sweet, warm, kind, never loses her patience mother.
Oh, don't lie. That shall not lie. Okay.
Look at, we're not even 30 seconds into this podcast and you're already quoting scripture. Thou shalt not lie. Well, okay. So that's actually the
Okay.
perfect place to start this podcast. So
Yeah.
people might be wondering, Jasmine, why the heck is your mom on the podcast today? And we actually had a conversation with the podcast team and we're like, how can we show up and serve podcast listeners well? What are so many podcast listeners, the Jasmine Star listener? Where is he or she in the world? And chances are many people are unexpectedly
Mm,
homeschooling
mm,
their children in light of the coronavirus,
mm,
COVID-19. And so
mm.
I couldn't think of a better person to speak about homeschooling than my very own mom who homeschooled not one, not two, not four, but five children. Mom,
Oh,
welcome to the show.
thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. I love you.
I love you too. Okay, so I want to be very clear. There are some people who are thrusted into being unexpected homeschool parents.
Hmm.
And how did your journey start? And for people who are interested, maybe you don't have a child, or maybe it's not like maybe you're not homeschooling, but you're wondering how could you raise a child that fosters creativity, but also personal drive? So for those listeners who are like, I'm not sure this is for me, we're actually talking about a holistic approach of how I was raised to become the person that I ended up becoming. And is
Hmm.
that duplicatable? So mom, how did you
Hmm.
get started in a brief little synopsis? How did you get started homeschooling?
Well, we were looking, your dad and I were already looking into some preschool programs, and we found out that they were very expensive. And at the time, your dad was the only one working. It was hard. But a book crossed my path, and it was on homeschooling. A friend of mine gave it to me, and she said, you should consider this or look into this, which I did. I read the book. I must admit, I was very impressed. And that's how I, the wheels just started turning. At the age of 3,
Hmm.
I was introduced to homeschooling
Okay.
when you were at 3.
Okay. So just to be very clear, to make sure that we're all on the same page, people might see
Mhm.
me today and they might have assumptions of how I was as a child. Now, I don't know what their assumptions are, but could you put all to rest? Like, how was I as a child when I was, let's say, 8 or 9 years old? How would you describe me as a child?
You're a driver. You were a driver. It's almost as if I could almost say, reading books on birth order, the first child is always that achiever, that leader, that reader. Uh, how would I describe you? You definitely were. You love learning, Jasmine. You did love learning, and I think it's because we made learning fun. It should be fun. Homeschooling is not only a two-dimensional world of paper and pen. So we did a lot of different things. But as a child, once again, you were obedient, but yet a driver. You were creative. You
Okay,
loved to
so
play, so on and
we're
so
gonna
forth.
we're gonna stay here. We're gonna stay here for 1 second because there's two sides. For every light side, there is a dark side. But one thing that I
Mhm.
want, my mom, I think, is being very kind and nice, and she's talking about the light side of who I was as a child.
Okay.
But the dark side of having a child who is a driver is you have the tendency to be headstrong and obstinate and
Mhm.
stick your heels in the ground. And
Mhm.
how many times was I telling you how to homeschool me? Like,
Mm. Yeah, several times. There were times when you would stamp your feet and say, I want to go to a regular school because all the kids in the neighborhood, right,
right.
were going to school down the street. And you would do this quite often until I got very angry one day and I said, Jasmine, I'm going to check you in the school. I'm going to go check it out first, though, which I did. I sat in.
And
Et
I
cetera, et
should
cetera.
probably I should probably
Sure.
tell people because you are still being very nice. This was probably around the time that my mom got so sick and tired of me and my twin sister really arguing and banging at each other's throats. And I remember
Yes.
that I was talking back to my mom with such ferocity. I probably was 9 years old, and I'll
Oh
never
my
forget.
goodness.
I was talking back to you, and we kept on going back and forth. And I kept on picking at you and picking you. And even as a 9-year-old, I knew how to push your buttons. And I will never forget, we are in La Puente, California, living on Meeker Street, and you had been
Yes.
homeschooling us all day. You were so tired. You would wear
Yeah.
these like oversized pink sweatpants and an oversized sweatshirt.
Oh
And
my
you
God,
didn't, and you wouldn't wear a bra, and you happened to be sweeping the floor. And you were so mad at me that you tried getting your broom to spank me. And I ran outside of the house. I'm running down the street, and you go down the porch, down the driveway, barefoot in pink sweats with a broom. You chased me like 2 houses, and I'm running with all my might to get away from you.
Oh my God.
So if there are
I forgot about that.
Oh, thank God.
I forgot about that. But no, honestly, that is true. You were that type.
I was
very
that,
obstinate.
Very, very obstinate. So there's probably a lot of people who not only are they homeschooling their children, they are also trying to start a business. And one thing that you had said is that learning goes beyond just a pen and paper. Now, I have to say that I am at a point of motherhood where Luna is not going to school, and that's not something that I'm faced with. But I do see a lot of parents worrying that they're not quote unquote doing it right, or that their kid is going to be behind. And from your experience homeschooling 5 children, and I can safely say that many of us, like statistically and test wise, we were not ahead of the curve. If anything, we were definitely behind. What would you tell a mom or a dad who's worried that they're not doing right by their kid all of a sudden being a homeschool parent during a pandemic?
I would tell a parent not to freak out. You're the best teacher your child could have. You're their main influencer. Now, as far as what subjects, getting into school. I mean, we grew up with paper and pen books. And if that's the way you want to start, then you just start that way. I was a little bit more freer. I didn't like to push my children. I would, how could I say, if I saw the strength that I saw in you was linguistic. You love to read. So I do a lot of reading. And in reading, you not only learn vocabulary, you learn punctuation, so on and so on. Keep it real simple. Don't feel as if you have to buy all these books when you could do it just very, very simple. Physical exercise outside, walking to the park. You don't have a car, we would walk to the library, we would walk to the park. Keeping it really simple. Cover the basics. If you have to go with textbooks, go. If you need help, get a tutor or get a friend that knows.
Right. But like we should go back. I mean, we could say like get a tutor or get extra textbooks. But for people who don't know, like our financial situation as a family was really, really, really tight. So my mom and dad couldn't afford to buy us textbooks. So my mom at the end of a school year would go down to a local elementary school where teachers would throw away books that had missing pages. So my mom would get like 6 or 8 textbooks. They all had different sections, but my mom would rip out the sections and then reassemble. So she would take 8 books, take those 8 books apart, and then reassemble one book that had all of the pages. And so I just want people to know that wherever they are, if they have a book or if they don't have a book, or you know, they have what we didn't have, and that was the internet. And the internet is free of resources for people. And so I just want this to be like a conversation to like, number one, coming from a kid whose mom, you know, actually mom, talk to us about what grandpa and grandma said to you when you said you were going to homeschool your kids. Now, mind y'all, these are my mom's parents. These are what we would call in Puerto Rico jibaros, right? They come from the hills of Puerto Rico. They are not educated. In fact, like they are the lowest of echelons in Puerto Rico. That's my lineage from the islands. And so they came to America to give their children an entirely different experience and made so many sacrifices. So my mom went to parochial school. She went to Catholic school. And so you could just imagine that my mom didn't, you know, graduate formally from college. And then all of a sudden, here's my mom who, you know, she tried her best in school, wasn't like honor roll. And then all of us, and didn't complete college. And then you're going to tell grandma, hey, I'm going to homeschool my kids. What did grandma and grandpa say?
Tú estás loca. Está loca. So
You're
you're
crazy.
crazy. You are crazy. We came to California from New York to work hard and to give you a very good education. And of course, I did. But anyway, that's what my parents felt and what they believed and what they worked very, very hard for. And they could not totally agree with me for quite some time. It wasn't until maybe you were 8 or 9 or 10 that they could see that you were very mature. You were already reading by the age of 10, even though you didn't learn how to read till about the age of 9, okay?
I
But
didn't learn how to read till later than that, Mom.
really? Well, Bianca then. She always says 9.5. Anyway, so they finally, and then I think what really thrilled my mom, my dad had already passed away, Jasmine. But what really thrilled my mom was not only, and she was there for your high school graduation, but she was there for your college graduation.
Mm.
So she had to believe, she was convinced that I laid a foundation at least for your education. And she was then, I guess, convinced that my choice was A-okay.
I'll never forget. It was our junior year. And for people who don't know, my sister and I went to the same college and we ended up being roommates. And I'll never forget taking my grandmother. It was our junior year. She used to live in Las Vegas and she was visiting in California. And we took her to our college and we opened up like the suite and we walked her into our room and we had 2 twin beds and she started dancing salsa in the center of the room. And she had
Yeah,
said she
I
never
remember that.
imagined that her granddaughters would go to college. Like it was so
Exactly.
far from her belief that it was like possible. And so she was just
Mm-hmm.
so
Thrilled.
proud. She was so proud.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you had mentioned something that we didn't learn how to read until we were 9.5 or 10. To the best of my recollection, I distinctly remember being around 11. So
Mm-hmm.
it was late for me. I was definitely a late bloomer. So at the
Mm-hmm.
time, so people are listening, it's like so important because here is my mom who is trying to do her best. I'm clearly behind the curve. And there are probably people who are listening and they might feel like their child is behind the curve. What did you do,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, to really help move the needle? Like you gave us a ton of freedom and you made things really fun. You would make like flashcards, you would write, index cards with like words and we would play memory and we'd have to say the words. But like what's something that you would tell a parent? Because I often get in DMs, people are like, Jasmine, you didn't learn how to read till 11. Like my kid is really behind. And I'm like, your kid is right where your kid is supposed to be. Like just because you learn
Mm-hmm.
later doesn't make you at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my opinion. What would you say as a parent
Mm-hmm.
to somebody who's just like, with everything that's going on, my kid is falling behind. They were already behind to begin with. Like, what do you say to that parent?
Mm-hmm. Um, Trust your child. You know, get to know your child. What are his strengths? What is he interested in? Why don't you study something that he's interested in and tie in the subjects? I would put my own lessons together. For example, Jasmine, I think at one time wanted to learn about giraffes.
No, it was
That was a
koalas. It
theme.
was koalas, remember?
Oh yeah, koalas. So from koalas, first of all, she was interested in that. I was interested in what she was interested in. And we tied in geography, we tied in math, we tied in science, we tied in reading. Something as simple as that to get your child loving to learn. I see a lot of children are burned out with school, burned out. You know what? Why don't you let them learn what they want to learn and bring in those core subjects, the reading, the writing, visiting the library, maybe going to a museum, a field trip, so on. Keeping it very simple and it's very inexpensive.
Okay, so I feel like, and man, I feel like I'm gonna really chap a lot of hides. I'm gonna push a lot of people away by saying what I'm gonna say. But like I know it to be my truth at this point in time. Is that in California, remember, I think it's in 4th grade, Mom, where they mandated that the California missions, like, right? Like that
California
was
history, yeah.
well, California history, and part of that was like the missions. And
Right,
during
the
fourth grade,
missions.
everybody else is creating like the missions
Mhm.
projects, right? And I don't know any of the missions. And I think maybe I don't even know. Is it sixth grade? You were supposed to learn like multiplication tables, I think. I,
No, by third.
oh,
By
see, well,
third grade. You should
I
have. By second or third, but today it's like they're really pushing it.
well, anyway, I
Yeah.
still to this day don't know my multiplication tables, and I don't know state capitals. And, I probably have a little bit of a hard time with geography. And I feel like what I'm about to say is like going to piss people off, but I'm going to maintain
Mhm.
it. Is that my mother fostered creativity. And
Mhm.
she fostered creativity because she didn't drill down all of these
Mhm.
things you must know. And she
Mhm.
didn't drill down an archaic education, not taking
Mhm.
in the social dynamic. And at this point in time, people with children on the internet, they could find out a lot more and they could do a lot more.
Mhm. Oh,
And so
yes.
there's parents who are just like, oh, they might be falling behind, or maybe I'm not so great at teaching them multiplication. And like, I want to say, I graduated with highest honors and I took calculus level
Mhm.
classes in college, and I didn't need to know those things. So what do you
Mhm.
tell a parent who is just like, I just want to follow the rules? Like, what would you speak to creativity? Like, how important is being a creative parent to empower a child to actually learn to think on his or her own, enjoy the process of learning? Like, what do you say to creativity specifically?
Be interested in what your child is interested in. Be interested in what your child is interested in. And just jump on that, take advantage of what he is interested in, and he'll stay focused. He will love you for it. Um, you could take anything and make it creative. Okay,
Mm.
from numbers to sports to whatever it may
Oh,
be.
can
I just took it very, yes.
I give an example of what you did? Let's go back to the
Sure.
koala. Okay, so my mom, it's called theme teaching, right? Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Okay, so
Thematic teaching. Yeah.
thematic teaching. So my mom would take a theme and she would build a
Yeah. Yeah.
curriculum around it. So I was
I
really
wouldn't choose it. You would choose it.
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all, people ask where I get my attitude from. Listen, my mother doesn't even think she has an attitude, and she's coming up to the camera like, "Oh, let me tell you something. You chose it." Okay. Okay. So I chose koalas. And my mom said, okay, it's going to be koalas. So what we focused on was
Mhm.
geography. I learned to
Yes.
fall in love with Australia.
Australia. Mhm.
So not only did we learn about Australia and the original pygmies, is that you made me make a
Mhm.
salt dough map. Now we had no money, so you get flour, a little bit of salt
Mhm.
and water, and we would make
Mhm.
a salt dough
Mhm.
map. So you sketched out what
Mhm.
Australia would look like, and then I put the dough over it, and then we had watercolor, and I
Mhm.
painted the dough and the Great Barrier Reef, and we talked about where kangaroos
Mhm.
mostly populated, and then you incorporated math, and math came in the form that
Mhm.
in the American system, we use inch and miles, and in Australia, they use meters. So this is where we started understanding the
Mhm.
difference between miles and meters. And this whole time, I am learning, but I am not like rote repeating, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so,
Exactly. We made learning fun. It should be fun.
so would you say, Mom, that if given the choice, if you had to homeschool a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old right now,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
had a curriculum and your child has to go on Zoom for 3 to 4 hours a day, and
Mhm.
then they have homework after, if that was
Mhm.
your child, what would you do? Now you have a curriculum and they have homework, but what would
Mhm.
you do to make it fun? If a mom or dad is like, I just got to get these stupid homework assignments done, and I got to finish my side hustle, and I really got to get my website done. What is like one
Mhm.
thing that somebody can do to incorporate a little bit of fun in learning during this time?
For Pete's sakes, get them out in nature. Get them outdoors. Get them outdoors. It does something to the mind. It does something physically, mentally, spiritually. Kids love it, but there is a nature deficit disorder going on in our world today, in our state today. Education is not just paper and pen. So let's say they take care of all their schoolwork, all their paperwork, so on and so forth. You might want to ask them, what do they want to do? What would they be interested in? Again, you might not be able to do it every day. Maybe there's a field trip that you could take them to. Just anything, even outdoor, creating a garden, just getting them out in the dirt. If it's, I remember putting together paper boats, Jasmine, during the rain, and let them just kind of flow down the street,
Okay, wait. Don't forget the other idea. Don't forget the other ideas. I want to pause here and like actually create a story around what my mom is saying. Cause she's saying like, make a paper boat. And I don't want anybody to think that we happen to live by like some idyllic creek, right? And then, like the tadpoles are swimming. It's like, we literally got a piece of striped paper and a used popsicle stick and Scotch tape. And we just folded pieces of paper on repeat to build boats. And it was raining and we went to the gutter. Okay, we went to the gutter, and the gutter that is like iridescent. It's like blue, green, and pink with the streams of oil from people's driveways dripping down into the gutter. And we would place our paper boats right on top and they would float down. And we would run where it picked up. And we would see whose boat got the farthest. And then we'd bring out our second boat. And we would spend so much time having spent less than $1 being creative and using our mind outside of this. Now, I want to go through a couple of the other creative things that we did, Mom. But I was listening to a Brene Brown podcast, and she had said that oftentimes that right now parents and children are having a hard time creating fun in their lives.
Okay.
So you're saying it should be fun. And Brene had said that she sat down with her family, her husband and her 2 children, and they made a list of how do you find things fun? Like, what is your list of fun? And then what she did is everybody read their list.
Oh, okay.
And of the items on each list that there was an overlap, they ended up doing that as a family. So lo and behold, the whole family actually likes to go on hikes. Lo and behold,
why?
The family likes to play pickleball. I don't know what pickleball is. I'm sure people on the podcast are going to tell me. I think it must be like a a Middle America game. I don't know what it is, but they like playing pickleball. They like playing spades, right? And so if parents were to sit down with their kids and say, what do you like to do? And then you are selfish as a parent and say, this is what I like to do. And then you say, you like this and I like this. Let's do this together. And then it just sparks life and educational things to happen. So
exactly.
What was one of your most favorite things as you were homeschooling? What was one thing that you did that you were really proud of? It was like creative and it just really didn't make sense, but like it was good for us.
Okay. Oh, there were many things, but one that comes to mind, Jasmine, was I wanted to introduce you to poetry. And poetry.
I remember this.
And I bought a curriculum that had music, classical music, and some portraits, famous paintings.
Renaissance paintings, yes.
Yes, Renaissance paintings. And so what I decided to do one day is just have you almost memorize a poem, which I believe you girls did. I can't exactly remember, having the music in the background. And it was called Swing, Swing, and so on and so forth. But anyway, it was a girl swinging on a huge swing out somewhere in the wilderness. So I thought, where can I make this come alive? So we went to a very nice park. I got you on a swing, you and Bianca. I had a tape recorder, a cassette player, and I plugged in the song as you girls would swing back and forth, back and forth. Could you see how that song just was so much more exciting outside of a square room without any windows?
Okay, so that's my mom's version. Let me tell you the kid version. My parents at the time, they only had one car. So my mom actually had to wake up extra early, drop my dad off at work, drive back home, pack up the kids. And I'm pretty sure, Mom, why? I think the park was in Monrovia.
No, San Marino.
San Marino. Okay. So at the time we lived in either Baldwin Park or La Puente. So these are, for people who don't know, these are like really ripe areas, people, like really, really, really working class, little rough around the edges neighborhoods. My mom drives us to San Marino, which is just outside of Pasadena, gorgeous multi-million-dollar homes.
Yes,
We go to this
yes.
park, and my mom has this Play School tape recorder. It was white with red and blue buttons, and it was battery operated with double D batteries.
Do you remember that? Oh
Double
my
D
God.
batteries. So you put the fresh double D batteries, you put the cassette tape in, you place this on a swing, and you say, okay, girls, start swinging. Then you played the classical music, and you held up the Renaissance painting. It was a poster. You just held up the poster, and you kept on saying, okay, girls, repeat the poem, repeat the poem. And so we had to memorize this poem of us on a swing. And you want to know it to this day? Talk to me about the swing poem in the Chopin that we were listening to. Not
Exactly.
too bad for two brown girls from the hood.
Uh-huh.
You know, Mom?
Oh,
You
I'm
know?
telling you. Yeah, I know, Mom. I know. I know. It was just very exciting. Another real quick thing is who I think is Bianca wanted to learn more about air balloons. And so I showed you a video on the red, it's called the red balloon. I remembered it as a child in 3rd grade. And I was able to get a hold of it. I showed you the film. We learned about more about whatever hot air balloons and so on and so forth, where they take off. Well, of course, we don't live in an area where there's hot air balloons. Lo and behold, we decided to go to the library one Saturday morning, and there they have a hot air balloon. You could pay a couple of bucks, and they'll take you about 10 feet up and 10 feet down. I could not believe what a wonderful experience that was. That was like the cherry on top of the cake when it comes to thematic teaching.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that so clearly. Also, just to kind of tie things up when it comes to creativity, is my mom was pretty good at finding free resources. And I think that, as a family, we were relegated to what was free because my parents just didn't have any money. And there was an event during Thanksgiving called Pilgrims Fest. And I believe Pilgrims Festival is in Claremont, right, Mom? Was it Claremont? It's in Claremont, California,
yeah.
and it still goes on to this day. But to get in, it's free, and you could pay for certain activities. And I'll never forget that my mom wanted really to focus on us understanding, Thanksgiving here in America, and they would have free plays and like Renaissance music. I mean, we were dorks. Like, you bred the dorkiest kids. Like, you bred the most quintessential homeschoolers. But there was a small little event there at Pilgrims Fest called the Glue-In.
Oh yeah.
And for a quarter, you would get admission. Now, just imagine this, like, as a parents, I don't think get it, but it was so cool as a kid. And you said, okay, girls, I want you to be creative. And you gave us a quarter. And I know that a quarter doesn't sound like much, but at the time you were paying for 3 or 4 kids, and that's $1. And like, every dollar mattered to you. And so we got access. And what the Glue-In is you would get about a 6x6 piece of cardboard, and you would walk through junk. It was literally a junk pile. It would have like empty medicine vials. It would have milk cartons. It would have popsicle sticks. It would have puzzle pieces, like missing puzzle pieces. It would have a bunch of junk. And then what you did is you sat with your cardboard, and then an elderly pilgrim would come by and give you a tiny little cup of glue. And you would get your glue, and you would put all of your junk, and you would create anything you want. Now, to an adult and to a parent, it looked like a pile of trash, but to a kid, it was a castle, and it was the Mayflower, and it was a dream home. And I feel like it's so important now for parents, and specifically now that I'm so fortunate to have a child of my own, to not just depend on things that we pay for, but to really get creative around empty containers and making your own Play-Doh and making your own crayons.
Exactly. And even older children love that. Preteens would love to do that. Don't let them fool you. I'm telling you, they would just love making their own Play-Doh, or going out in the yard, getting a piece of cardboard, putting it on dirt. A week later, turn it over and see what creatures are in there. That's all part of learning. It's all part of life. That's science. That's a science lesson for free. I mean, there's just so many creative ways.
Speaking of older children enjoying like what would traditionally be like things for younger kids. So my mom and dad were really active at church, and they would volunteer in a myriad of different aspects of it. One time, like my mom was really focused on like Sunday school or vacation Bible school. And oftentimes there would be little nubs of crayons. Now the tiny crayons would often get discarded, but not my mom. My mom would collect them and she would put them in a tiny little Ziploc bag. And then over time, she had this pile of tiny nubs of crayons. And then what my mom did is she put us all together, myself, my twin sister Bianca, and my younger sister Alexandria. And she said, okay, let's start breaking them into different colors. We'd have blue, we'd have green, we'd have red. And they were not all ever the same type of red. And then we would take off the wrappers from the crayons, and then you would give us cupcake, the little cupcake cups,
Yes.
the little containers,
Yeah.
the paper
Yeah.
ones.
Yes.
And you put them in a 6 cupcake container, and we would fill it in with the blue nubs and the red nubs and the green nubs. And then we would bake that.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we bake them, they would melt. You would take them out, you would cool, and then you would take the paper off the cupcake. And we had a cupcake shaped crayon of multi different blues and multi different red. And like a whole brand new crayon that cost us nothing.
Nothing. And it was so much fun. See what you remember. You don't remember, geometry and algebra. You remember that.
I don't know my multiplication tables.
Simple as something as simple as that even, older kids would just enjoy, and it's just, and now with the internet, there's tons of information, tons of creative ideas that you can do with your children for free. See what they're interested in, see what they're concerned about. Maybe they love, or they love the ocean and they've noticed a lot of plastic out there and paper. Make it one day to go and clean up the beach, just turn that into something educational.
I absolutely love this. So over the years, you've seen me have ups and downs, childhood, middle age, adulthood, starting my business. And you and Dad have always really drilled down into me, like, there's no idea of being perfect. And like, you gave me the permission not to be perfect. So right now there's lots of entrepreneurs who are listening and they might be struggling with this like very idea. Now here we are, we're talking about homeschooling, we're talking about starting a business, but like, to me, you and Dad really mastered this idea of resilience, that like no matter what came your way, you guys always stood up, and that's what you guys showed me. But what were some of the things that you did to encourage my mindset of strength and positivity and perseverance and this really push away from perfectionism? Like, what would you tell somebody right now as an adult, as like they're feeling this pressure to be perfect, or they can only get it out if it's right? Like, what would you tell that person?
The secret of life is falling 7 times, but getting up 8 times. Failure is not, it's not falling down, it's refusing to get up. And I saw that with you, Jasmine, as a child and as an adult. Let me give you an acronym for fail, okay? Fail means, or an acronym would mean first attempt in learning. So if you think you have to do things perfect, but you feel as if you're failing or you keep falling, just get up and stay focused. Jasmine, you were a very focused individual. Bianca's a very focused individual. My children are very focused. And I guess we taught them that. You fall down, you get up, and you keep going. And you hope and you pray that God will keep you on that path and you might ask, what is that? My purpose in life is just stay with that passion. You know what your gifts and your abilities and talents are. Focus on that. And of course, share them with others. Failure is not the opposite, of success. It is part of success. You can learn a lot through failure. You learn more from failure than you do, success. And don't let it stop you, because failure actually builds character. So just stay focused, make time for yourself, especially now if you're homeschooling. just make sure and just stay focused on what your passion is, what your dream is. And there's a target there, aim for the goal and just keep going. And then if you have support, if you have your family support, oh dear God. I mean, I think, Jasmine, you are where you are today because you have the support of your family. And there were times when I would see you in tears. There were times when I know you were down and out. There were times, and I also, you might have maybe really felt like a failure when you left law school. But you know what? It was a moment, and it was what I believe God used for you, Jasmine, to turn you and to, that wasn't obviously your purpose. You know what, Jasmine, you wanted to go to law school, you made it into law school, but then I got sick, you came home, and I feel that was a turning point for you. You decided, well, okay, I'm gonna get married, I'll go back to law school, I'll be married, but there was a change, there was a turning point there, and that was discovering that your gift and your passion, which you really wanted to do, was when you thought you were failing, you really weren't. You were rediscovering, you were discovering your purpose in life. And that was to love people, to capture people and their love through photography. So, if you're at a point right now where you feel like a failure, get up. If you fall 7 times, you just get up 8 times and you stay focused.
I love you. I love you, Mom. Like, I felt like you got on a roll, and I feel like you right there is like the perfect place just to drop the podcasting mic. I feel like selfishly, I wanted to ask you as my mom, like, what do you think my purpose is? And I think you answered that.
Yeah.
But
No.
Selfishly, and this will probably get cut out of the podcast anyway, but what do you think my purpose is? From your opinion, from your perspective.
Yeah. Your purpose is to help and not to keep things secret. You are very successful in what you do. Now, you could keep that to yourself, but instead, you want to share it. And I think your purpose in life is to help others and to give, for it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. So you give, and that's what you're doing. That's why you kind of changed, your vision there for a while, and now you decide, instead of keeping photography to myself or just being a successful business person, I'm going to share how you can. I'm going to help, and I'm going to give out what I know, what I've experienced, to help you succeed. And that is your purpose in life.
I appreciate you, Mom. I think that's like a perfect way. We started the podcast with a scripture, thou shalt not lie. And we're going to end the podcast with a scripture. It is more blessed to give than it is to receive. That's right, Queen.
You know that's true.
I do know it's true. And you have modeled it because you have given everything and then some to your children, which then empowers us to give away freely, because we know that we can't outgive God. So Mom, I love you. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for giving encouragement to people who are unexpectedly homeschooling their children.
I hope so. If they walk away with one thing,
that's right, Mom.
That one thing can turn their whole child's life around.
That's right, Mama. That's right. Okay. Besos. I love you.
Love you. Love you.
I love you, Mom.